Being with us, we will start this side event, I'd like to thank all of you in the room and the speakers. It's quite a busy day, so everybody's rushing. So please accept our apologies for this slight delay in starting this event. This event is co-organized by Earth Justice, the Geneva Environmental Network, GRET, which is the Geneva Human Rights, Biodiversity and Land group, and also the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the right to a clean, healthy and sustainable environment. First, a small technical issue. We have here, thanks to the Gen, a whole team following and that will be also streaming this event. So only the people who are authorized can take pictures. So thank you to follow this instruction. Thank you very much for that. This event has, I've been told, an interesting but sometimes strange title for a number of the people who are following the Human Rights Council, because I've been asked several times, what is a biome? So actually, it is indeed the first time that the Human Rights Council, thanks to the report of the Special Rapporteur, is dealing with a specific biome, which are the ocean. Biome are different specific large categories of ecosystems. Forest, for example, are a biome, and ocean, of course, is a very important one. Not only this is a very important issue, as we've been hearing this morning, and as we will continue to hear in the Human Rights Council this afternoon, states are really converging on here. There's a very clear consensus. But we will also have an interesting conference on oceans in a few months, which is the third UN Ocean Conference, also called the 2025 UN Ocean Conference, and it is co-hosted by France and Costa Rica in Nice from the 9th to the 13th of June, this coming June. And its objective is basically to see how Sustainable Goal 14, which is conserve and sustainably use the ocean, seas, and marine resources for sustainable development, is really implemented. So this is why we thought it was really important in this discussion and on the side of the discussion going on right now in room 20, to see how the UN conference can benefit from the work which is happening here in Geneva. The linkages between the different human rights systems is extremely important. And this is a very good opportunity to increase our efficiency. This conference will, at the end, agree by consensus on a declaration which will be called the Nice Ocean Action Plan. And currently, this action plan is being negotiated in New York, thanks to the facilitation of Australia and Cape Verde. So this is why, to start our discussion, we're really very happy to have with us the ambassador from the permanent representative of the Republic of Cape Verde to the UN offices here in Geneva, Her Excellency Clara Delgado Jesus. Apologies for my very bad pronunciation. Thank you very much. And so, Ambassador, we will start with you because the role that your country with Australia is playing is quite an important one. Everybody's looking at what would be the outcome. Of course, you're in the facilitation process. You cannot tell us now yet what will be the exact outcome. But also, we're very happy to have you with us because the Cape Verde as such is, of course, an extremely important player when we're talking about the field of ocean governance in general, like many developing island states. So let me start by giving you the floor for an introductory remark for this event. And once again, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Moderator, Yves Lador, Ms. Astrid Fuentes, UN Special Rapporteur on the human right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment, distinguished panel discussant, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Moderator, I'm here and I'm grateful for the invitation extended to me to say a few words regarding the forthcoming Nice Ocean Conference. You have mentioned that Cabo Verde is co-facilitator with Australia. So I'm very glad to be here with you today and to say a few words as in these open remarks. As you mentioned, I come from a small island development state, Cabo Verde, for which the protection and preservation of the environment, especially the marine environment, is of paramount importance. Traditionally, the seas surrounding the islands have been a mainstay of our living conditions, providing not only a reliable route for communication between the islands and between them and the outside world, but also important food resources to the coastal populations. In addition, our seas have been, in the last 2 decades or so, a main factor in our economic development, as our unpolluted shores and beautiful beaches have given rise to a sizable tourist industry still growing, as you know. As you may know, Cabo Verde, our tourism depend of our sea and our beaches and represent 25% of our GDP. The importance that Cabo Verde ascribed to the need of protection of the environment, including, of course, the marine environment, is therefore reflected not only on our legislation, but also our constitution, which declares that, I quote, everyone shall have the right to a healthy life and ecologically balanced environment and the duty to defend and preserve the environment. Kind of. Adding that economic activities shall not jeopardize the ecosystem, nor should they contribute to the disequilibrium of the relation between man and the environment. This explains our support for the ongoing process of treating the protection of the environment, including the marine environment, from a human rights perspective, as was done by the Human Rights Council 2021 decision at the General Assembly 2022 resolution, declaring that everyone on the planet has a right to a healthy environment, thus establishing an interconnectedness between the human rights and the environment. The enjoyment of a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment is a human right that should be promoted and supported by all stakeholders, namely states and international organizations, associations, and business as well. The protection and preservation of the marine environment, especially against marine pollution, the need for ensuring the exploitation of marine living resources in a sustainable manner, and the protection and preservation of marine biodiversity and marine environment, as well as the growing concern of the negative impact on the marine environment caused by climate change, have been and are still the object of discussions and negotiations in several fora at the regional and global levels. These had led over the years to the adoption of a significant number of conventions and agreements at the global and regional levels, as indicated in the report of the Special Rapporteur. The 2025 UN Ocean Conference to be held in Nice, in France, this year, offers an opportunity to build on that legacy, introducing a human right approach to the environment debate. So, Mr. moderator. I think that we are looking forward to the successful UN Ocean Conference, ensuring the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment as a human right. I thank you once again for this opportunity to be here today with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Excellency, and you described very well how wide the issue will be at this ocean conference. So I think we can evaluate clearly the challenge which is coming in front of us. So now, Mrs. Puentes Riano, thank you, Special Rapporteur, for being with us. This is your day in the Council, definitely. As a number of countries have said, welcome for your first report to the Council. You presented already a report to the UNGA last fall. This is your first report to the Council. And you started very strongly with this presentation of the human rights issues linked to a biome, the ocean. You are also mentioning the coming conference in your report. So I'm very happy to give you the floor to introduce you to introduce us to this link between the two events.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, for this very important side event and for the support, and also not only, of course, and I really am grateful with Earth Justice and with the Geneva Human Rights, Biodiversity and Land Task Force and the Geneva Environmental Network for the interest in the report and also the support to unpack and to talk in different side events, including definitely this one on this very important issue on linking the ocean and human rights. I also thank and congratulate Cabo Verde and Australia for the chairing and the coordination in New York, and also Costa Rica and France that are the co-organizers for the conference. And I haven't said that, but I will do it in the dialogue that as you know, as a special rapporteurs, we can decide the topic of our reports. And one of the key priorities in my mandate is to make sure that whatever I do in the mandate is helping states, which is our mandate, and I really want to do it in practice, like identify priority aspects and analyze through the opportunity in the report, what are the challenges that we have and how to embrace that. And that's the reason, one of the key reasons, actually the main reason that I decided to put the report or to do the report this year is because of the UN Ocean Conference. Because of course, this report next year would be a completely different scenario. And so for that, in addition to that, and that's what I'm including here, the recommendation is the importance to include a specific language in the political resolution on the human rights-based approach and the human right to healthy environment. I think that that's key. I have had already the opportunity to review the political resolution and suggest some language, including based on the UN resolution recognizing the human right to healthy environment, and also based on agreed language, including the Kunming-Montreal biodiversity framework. And in that, one of the things that I'm trying to do also, and thinking and rescuing that the ocean is one single biome. It covers 70% of the planet. And in a lot of ways, some people have also said that instead of Earth, we should have been called Ocean Planet, because that's what this planet is. And I heard that a lot in the inputs from states, but also institutions, that one of the biggest challenges for ocean governance is the siloed perspective and the compartmentalization that there is, including at the UN conferences and systems. And so in that sense, I really hope that the human rights-based approach, but also the human right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment is specifically incorporated in the political resolution, and it helps to advance more holistic and comprehensive way to address not only in an isolated process in the conference, but helping to merge and to coordinate better UNFCCC, CDB, the work that it's done here by the Council that is very important, as we know, the General Assembly, the office, they're all, are a lot of spaces that are linked to the ocean. The final thing that I want to say also is that one of the things that is worrisome still is not only the increasing of fossil fuel projects in the ocean that we're seeing, but also making sure that all ocean issues incorporate these human rights issues, including blue economy initiatives. And so in that sense, again, the right to healthy environment will be key to address and make sure that there is access to information, participation, and access to justice. And I will stop here. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Excellency and Special Rapporteur, for setting the scene here very, very clearly. So now the next step in the discussion, we propose to hear 4 contributions and 4 reflections on these linkages between human rights and the ocean, and how it should be dealt, or how we hope it will be dealt, in view of the conference in Nice. And then at the very end, we will turn to the 2 co-chairs, Costa Rica and France, who are with us today. And here I take already this opportunity to thank them for having joined, and they will be able to bring some presentation of the conference and some concluding remarks. So first, now let me turn to Mr. Benjamin Schachter, who is the coordinator of the Environment and Climate Change team at the Office of the High Commissioner. Ben, your team and yourself have done a lot to make this issue progress, the question of the environment in general, and also climate change, in the work at the office, but also here at the Council. And so we know that you've been looking very closely at the preparation of the Nice conference. So we're very happy to hear what you have to say about this coming event. Ben, the floor is yours. It's okay. It works.
Okay. Thank you very much. Really a pleasure to be here with everybody, and thank you to Ambassador from Cabo Verde for the opening remarks and the commitment that you expressed to a rights-based approach, and both at the national level and in the context of the desired outcomes for the UN Ocean Conference. I want to start with a few words just about the ocean and human rights, and then move on to refer to some of the related global processes, right? Because the UN Ocean Conference takes place in a context where there are so many critical discussions ongoing in different spaces, really about the future of our planet, the future of the ocean, and our futures, because all of those things are interconnected. So we know that biodiversity loss and marine and coastal pollution, including from plastics, overfishing, ocean heating, acidification, and climate change, jeopardize ocean ecosystems and are adversely impacting human rights, including the human right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. And conversely, we know that a healthy and resilient ocean is essential for the effective enjoyment of all human rights. States, therefore, have an obligation to take meaningful, effective, and urgent action to address the degradation of the ocean's ecosystems and the correlating and corresponding adverse human rights impacts. Such action is also necessary to achieve Sustainable Development Goal 14, as well as the Agenda 2030 as a whole. We know that as well that the impacts of ocean degradation are felt disproportionately by people in vulnerable situations, by indigenous peoples, by small-scale fishers and fish workers, as well as persons with disabilities, and many others. And that also comes with it a series of human rights obligations to address those impacts, to advance equality and non-discrimination in the context of action related to the ocean, whether it be through law, policy, programs, and funding. So that's the framework or the space within which we should be thinking and approaching the ocean. Section C of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework also makes it very clear that all action related to biodiversity should take a human rights-based approach, respecting, protecting, and fulfilling human rights. So in that context, as well as here at the council, where we've had the recent adoption of the first ever resolution on biodiversity at the last session, and we have the ongoing discussions around the next resolution on the right to a healthy environment, which Astrid raised. These issues are coming up, and states are agreeing that we have to take a human rights-based approach to ocean action. You'll hear, I think, quite a lot from Ghazali on the rights of indigenous peoples. So I won't dwell too much there, but just to say the BBNJ, the agreement for marine protected areas beyond national jurisdiction, explicitly refers to the need to respect the rights of indigenous peoples in the context of its operationalization and implementation. And the rights of indigenous peoples are, of course, protected anywhere human rights are referred to, and in many contexts specifically referenced, including in the context of the CBD and the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework as well. So what are some of these spaces and discussions that are happening right now? Deep seabed mining at the International Seabed Authority. Really critical that a human rights-based approach be taken here. We had a whole hour-long event in which I was happy to participate earlier this week on deep seabed mining, and I will spare you from trying to summarize it in anything more than a few words, which is to say there was a consensus and widespread agreement that this issue has to be one approached with a very high degree of caution. There was a broad degree of support for current efforts to push for a moratorium on deep seabed mining until such a time as there was greater scientific certainty and a governance framework in place to ensure that it could only go forward in a manner that respects, protects, and fulfills human rights. The plastics negotiations are explicitly also about marine pollution and microplastics. And we all know those negotiations have been challenging. A key part and one of the most difficult parts of those discussions is how and where to integrate human rights. And we have to have a plastics treaty that respects, protects, fulfills human rights in order to protect the ocean. I mentioned already the Global Biodiversity Framework, the BBNJ. There's also the ongoing discussion around carbon removals, blue carbon at the UNFCCC. Again, this is a space where it's absolutely critical environmental and social safeguards in place. And now, as promised, I'll briefly touch on the UN Ocean Conference, just to share a little bit about what we've contacted governments, France, Costa Rica, Cabo Verde, and Australia about in terms of sharing what we'd like to see in a UN Ocean Conference declaration. It's important that the declaration highlight that the establishment and management of marine protected areas follow a human rights-based and gender-responsive approach consistent with that agreed to under the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. It's important that it recognizes the vital contribution to the health of ocean biodiversity and ecosystems made by small-scale fishers, indigenous peoples, and fish workers, and emphasizes the protection of their rights, including the traditional knowledge of indigenous peoples and customary tenure rights. And it's important that there's robust engagement and a participatory and inclusive process The latest decision adopted by CBD COP 16, marine and coastal and island biodiversity, explicitly calls for full and effective participation of Indigenous peoples and local communities, women and girls, children and youth, and persons with disabilities in decision-making processes, and their access to justice and information, as well as the full protection of human rights defenders in the context of marine, coastal, and island biodiversity. And we would love for the UN Ocean Conference Declaration to reflect those commitments and reaffirm them. And finally, to emphasize the role and responsibility that businesses have in the context of the ocean by explicitly referencing the UN guiding principles on business and human rights. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ben. And it was very, very useful to have this general presentation of the different bodies which are working on this issue. And it's a good illustration of what is in the report of the Special Rapporteur about the fragmentation that we have in the field of ocean, and also how human rights can help to bring some kind of a more coherent approach to these different elements, because you should not have a diversity of rights depending on the different instrument. It has to be one way to defend human rights and to be coherent. So I think it was a very, very useful element that you shared with us. We heard already this morning in the discussion at the Council, and we'll hear probably a bit more of that this afternoon, about the importance of this issue for Indigenous peoples. Because at least for those who are living in the coastal area, actually all of them are concerned, because all of us are concerned by ocean issues wherever we are, including here in Switzerland. But of course, there are specific issues linked to those who are living in the coastal area or living from small scale fishing. So Ghazali or Rohella, we're very happy to have you with us. You're representing here in Geneva the International Indian Treaty Council. And I know that you and a number of other organizations are also following very closely what is being discussed in New York. So what is your take right now about this situation? What are your hopes for this conference? And how do you see this link between human rights and the ocean?
Well, thank you very much, Yves, for organizing this as well, and very grateful for what the panelists have shared so far. And oh, that is a very old picture. A lot more hair back then. Yeah, so obviously the Human Rights Council here is in session. There are forums on the right to clean, health, and sustainable environment, which has an ocean dimension to it. But like many other, everyone here and my colleagues probably as well, is that we have many hats on. So I also cover the BVNJ negotiations for Indigenous peoples at the for IDC in New York, as well as the political declaration negotiations for the UNOP treaty that's also ongoing in New York. So I know that delegations don't like lists, but I'm going to share some lists. It is very important, this is definitely for Indigenous peoples when it comes to ocean governance, climate governance, and everything else. It's very important that the human rights-based approach and human rights safeguards are integrated in texts. Whether it is the Paris agreements, the plastic pollution treaty, BPNJ, and now the UNOP 3 political declaration, that the human rights-based approach must be integral. It must be the backbone of that particular political declaration, because we're all trying to save the planet, but we're also trying to save people that are living on the planet. To be able to do that, it is very important, particularly from Indigenous people's point of view, the full and effective participation of Indigenous peoples. It's not because we like to be at every microphone, but it's more so that we can share our knowledge, that we can share our wisdom. And believe me, there's a lot more wisdom in Indigenous people than currently in. I have like 0.0001% of wisdom in me when it comes to traditional knowledge and Indigenous knowledge. But yeah, my elders, communities, and everywhere else, they have a lot of knowledge to share. They want to share, but it's very hard to share that information. Very hard to share the knowledge through scientists or like white coat scientists. That is why like the full and effective participation of any peoples is very important. But you cannot share the knowledge of indigenous peoples if it's being seen as like a nice to have, like a module that you can attach, or like the cherry on top of the cake that you're preparing. Like you need to have equality between scientific knowledge as well as the knowledge of indigenous people and or traditional knowledge, so that you get co-creation of new knowledge, because that is something that we need at this point when we are protecting the biodiversity, when we're trying to fight pollution and trying to fight climate change. And if you go through the zero draft of the UNEP 3 declaration and the Rep 1, there's some significant changes, but it still is not there yet when it comes to integrating the rights-based approach to start with in the text. Obviously, UNEP 3, as has been shared before, is what it's, and I'm sure that the delegate of France will highlight on that. Is that it's what I heard actually, that Nice is trying to be for oceans what Paris was for climate. And those are not my words, but it was last week. It was a UNCTAD events parallel to the HRC, what's the Ocean Forum, and there was something like that was shared. So it's a combination of trying to the entry into force of the BVNJ agreement. The last 3 states that have been ratified it were Antigua and Barbuda, Marshall Islands, and Kiribati. We need 40 more for the full entry into force of the BVNJ. And Ben already explained like the significance of the BVNJ vis-a-vis indigenous peoples and the knowledge of indigenous peoples. But like we're not there yet, and we don't. The thing with the BVNJ is that it should not be like a PCITS kind of AOSIS kind of ratification. Like there needs to be a universal ratification of the BVNJ, and the importance of that is stipulated in some ways into the UNEP 3 political declaration at this point. And then obviously what UNEP 3 is also trying to do is what we understand is to create momentum for the finalization of plastic treaty negotiations. But as delegations in New York are currently barely finalized the consultation on Ref 1, it should have been by Ref 2 at this point already. So there's some major points that are being negotiated at this point. So there are 5 particular elements that are not in, or that should be strengthened in the political declaration at this point in the negotiations. Obviously, there needs to be a balance between comprehensive inclusivity with concrete rights obligations. Rep 1, it does expand on the list of groups requiring inclusion, but it lacks mechanisms to protect specific rights. So it must go beyond general inclusion and address equal access to resources, decision-making, and remedies. And there's no explicit references to human rights instruments beyond UNCLOS, but international law should be part of that, so not just UNCLOS. Operationalization of the human rights-based approach needs to be in there as well. There's some murky references to human rights-based approach, but it can go further than that. We need to go further than that. Again, without clear mechanisms, this commitment risks just being rhetorical as a nice to have versus a need to have. There's a potential for uneven application and prioritization. That's my 3rd point. There's a broad mention of vulnerable groups. Then again, these groups are not vulnerable. They've been put in vulnerable situations. CITES, LDCs, indigenous peoples, farmers, everyone else. We've been put in those situations. And they need to be explicitly referenced in that political declaration. Obviously, the integration of indigenous peoples' rights and the knowledge of indigenous peoples. There are references to KMGBF, absolutely. However, free, prior, and informed consent must be the pinnacle must be emphasized when it comes to the knowledge of indigenous peoples, and that needs to be further strengthened. And then the last one, and I'll stop there, is there needs to be an assurance of accountability and access to justice. Neither the zero draft or the Rep 1 includes mechanisms to hold actors accountable to human rights violations in ocean governance. And effective remedies are necessary. We've seen it in Article 6 carbon market negotiations. You need a redress mechanism. You need something along those lines, particularly in areas beyond national jurisdiction. So strengthened legal frameworks at national and international levels are needed to uphold human rights protections and to go beyond just a mere mention of human rights-based approach, but you need to actually put it into the text. So that's the main point I would like to share in terms of the current state of play when it comes to UNOP 3 declaration.
Thank you so much, Ghazali. It was so useful to have this insight of the negotiation going on right now in New York. Now let me turn to two contributions that we will have through video messages, which will give us also a look of some of the challenges that we will have to take into consideration. And I will start by a message which have been sent to us by Mr. Nathan Bennett, who is the chair of the People and Oceans Specialist Group of IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, and who was also one of the leaders of the Ocean Defenders project. So I have a few things to do, and I hope I'm going to do it correctly, technically speaking.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nathan Bennett, and I'm the chair of the People in the Ocean Specialist Group for the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, as well as the Global Oceans lead scientist for WWF. It's an honor to be asked to provide a brief video message for this event. Here, I want to first explore how ocean health and human rights are interconnected, then mention 3 ways that the recognition of a human right to a healthy environment can catalyze ocean action and transform ocean governance. And finally, I want to emphasize the importance of explicitly acknowledging the human right to a healthy ocean environment in ocean governance. A great place to start is in the final declaration of the upcoming United Nations Ocean Conference. First, a healthy ocean is fundamental to human well-being and to the maintenance of human rights to food, to livelihoods, to health, and to security, among others. Fisheries, for example, provide livelihoods and nutritional security to hundreds of millions of people worldwide. Coastal habitats, including mangroves, coral reefs, and seagrass meadows, protect coastal communities and infrastructure from extreme weather events and storm surges. A thriving ocean and the health, food, and economic benefits it generates also supports the foundations of peaceful and secure societies. And yet, there's evidence that human rights impacts associated with the degradation of the ocean environment are accelerating. Declines in ocean health, driven by overexploitation of resources, habitat destruction, pollution, and climate change, are undermining fundamental human rights. Globally, fishing is affecting the cultural rights, food security, health, and livelihoods of small-scale fishers and coastal populations that depend on fish and seafood. Declines in fisheries and marine resources are also producing and increasing conflicts as nations and groups fight for ever-scarce resources. Marine pollutants are contaminating the ocean, impacting ecosystems and accumulating in species, with implications for the right to food, to livelihoods, and to health. Impacts related to the climate crisis, ocean warming, acidification, changing weather patterns, extreme events, inundation, and storm surges are undermining the economic, housing, infrastructure, and physical security of coastal communities. And some groups, including women, children, older persons, persons with disabilities, indigenous peoples, small-scale fishers, coastal communities, and small island developing states routinely bear a disproportionate burden of these impacts. Second, the recognition of the human right to a healthy environment can be catalytic and transformative for ocean governance and related human rights. In particular, it can do so through catalyzing marine protection, through clarifying state obligations, through enhancing ocean economy practices as a result of clarifying private sector responsibilities, and it can do so through improving the inclusiveness of ocean governance. Governments have clear obligations, not options, pursuant to international human rights law, to enact, implement, and enforce laws that will improve ocean health and maintain the well-being of people who depend on marine ecosystems. But of course, any action to improve the ocean environment must also respect and protect human rights of coastal populations. Taking a human rights-based approach to ocean action is the right way forward. The private sector also has responsibility to respect human rights, including the right to a healthy environment, through taking specific actions to prevent, mitigate, and remediate impacts on human rights related to the ocean environment. Importantly, all private sector entities are subject to and required to comply with all applicable environmental and human rights laws and agreements of the countries where they operate and where they are domiciled, even when they are operating in international waters. The human right to a healthy environment offers a beacon of hope for coastal communities and constituencies struggling to ensure the just and sustainable conservation, restoration, and use of the oceans. Civil society actors and groups in situations of vulnerability can use this recognition to hold governments and private sector actors to account for actions that infringe on human right to a healthy ocean. Finally, the human right to a healthy environment and ocean must be recognized in all ocean governance discussions and frameworks and subsequently implemented through on-the-ground management actions. And by all ocean governance processes, I mean national and international ocean governance processes related to the development, management, and conservation of the ocean. They should explicitly reference human rights law and recognize the right to a healthy environment. And this will help to ensure that management and development activities are taken in such a way as to protect this right. A great starting place is to make sure that the United Nations Oceans Conference Declaration incorporates text that recognizes the human right to a healthy ocean environment and related obligations and responsibilities.
Very much. That was a very clear and very useful message. And now we will turn to Mrs. Sabrina Devereaux, who is one of Earth Justice attorney at the Ocean Program.
Hello, my name is Sabrina Devereaux, and I am an attorney with the Earth Justice Oceans Program, specializing in international ocean law and policy. I'm honored to speak to you today on behalf of Earth Justice, a nonprofit organization based in the United States dedicated to using the power of the law to protect the environment and the people who depend on it. My work at Earth Justice is premised on the principle that protecting marine ecosystems is essential to protecting human rights. This is because the greatest threats to marine biodiversity threaten human populations as well. For billions of people worldwide, the ocean and its biodiversity are more than an ecosystem. They represent an economically, culturally, and spiritually important space that shapes everything from the food we eat to the air we breathe. The ocean provides about 20% of the animal protein consumed by over 3.2 billion people, and about 70% of protein intake in island and coastal regions, offering critical nutrients and vitamins, particularly to vulnerable coastal populations. Marine biodiversity also provides essential services, including producing half of the world's oxygen, protecting coastal communities from flooding and storm surges, and sequestering enormous amounts of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. In addition, marine biodiversity is incredibly important for spiritual practices around the world. When marine ecosystems suffer, the populations who value these marine resources suffer too. Earth Justice attorneys partner with organizations and communities in countries all around the world who are faced with severe, sometimes existential threats to the marine ecosystems that they value and depend on for their livelihoods, food, cultural and spiritual practices, and well-being. In advocating for these partners, our work is focused on two key threats to marine environments that present a particularly urgent risk to human rights: offshore fossil fuel development and overfishing. Offshore oil and gas development involves a variety of harmful activities that threaten both marine species and coastal populations. Even before oil is exploited, companies conduct surveying, which produces noise that is louder than a rocket launch. This noise is loud enough to cause hearing loss in whales and kill plankton, with cascading effects on both fisheries and culturally important species. Offshore drilling creates a risk of catastrophic oil spills that not only kill marine wildlife and decimate fisheries, but also expose coastal populations to toxic air and water pollution. Earth Justice has supported coastal communities and indigenous groups in challenging these projects through legal systems and processes, but they often face an uphill battle against entrenched industry interests, ineffective governance, and legal systems that fail to recognize cultural and spiritual values. We have experienced similar challenges in our advocacy efforts to improve international fisheries management. Fisheries are both an essential source of food and livelihoods, as well as a conduit for injustice. Industrial fishing fleets that are subsidized by wealthy nations are capable of exploiting governance gaps in order to engage in illegal and unsustainable fishing practices on the high seas and within the waters of other nations to the detriment of coastal communities. Illegal fishing inequitably depletes ecosystems and deprives resources from people who fish legally, especially small-scale and traditional fishers. Illegal fishing is also linked with human rights abuses, including forced labor and human trafficking. Improving global fisheries management is critical to preventing these abuses. At the upcoming UN Ocean Conference, the international community will have an opportunity to commit to actions that will help coastal communities and fishers, and thus the global community, in their fights against offshore development and overexploitation. For example, impacted communities often have significant trouble accessing justice because of the difficulties in proving that they will be harmed by future projects. Binding commitments by governments to preserve marine environments for the benefit of present and future generations would shift the burden from communities having to prove that they will be harmed by a proposed project to companies proving that marine ecosystems won't be harmed. Similarly, a global commitment to the precautionary principle would mandate that governments proceed with caution and in favor of conservation, where the impacts to the marine environment and coastal populations are uncertain or unknown, strengthening our arguments against unfettered exploitation and in favor of expanded marine protected areas. Such a commitment would also prevent countries from rushing into novel activities, such as deep-sea mining, without fully understanding their marine impacts, supporting advocacy efforts in favor of improved scientific research. Even where exploitative activities proceed, mandated and meaningful consultation processes for local communities and indigenous groups can give a voice to the populations who will be impacted the most. At a minimum, no major development project should be allowed to go forward without the free, prior, and informed consent of the people who will be negatively impacted. In addition, relevant stakeholders should also be allowed to meaningfully participate in every step of the marine management process, from permitting decisions to the design of marine protected areas. As you gather in Geneva to discuss how human rights can contribute to and strengthen the Nice Ocean Action Plan, I encourage you to remember that protecting the ocean is essential to preventing the erosion of the human rights of millions, if not billions, of people worldwide. A strong action for the ocean is a strong action for human rights. Thank you.
So really thankful to both of these contributions, which I think were very complementary and giving a good view of the challenges coming for the conference. Before I turn to the concluding remark from the two co-chair, I'd like to just ask the special rapporteur if she would have a few elements to conclude this presentation about the challenges of the coming conference.
Thank you very much, Eve, for this very important event and moderating the event. I want to conclude just highlighting the reality where we are in. And we have heard a lot, not only about the impacts in the ocean of the activities that we are seeing, but that despite the existent evidence, scientific evidence, and traditional knowledge about the impacts of the extractive activities, we are seeing continually the increase of these activities, in specifically the continued increasing of fossil fuel extraction, and also the threat from deep sea mining, including also in terms of fisheries, illegal and under-regulated fisheries. So I really want to highlight the importance of, and also going to, and thinking about the UN Ocean Conference, the importance of the inclusion of human rights-based approach and the human right to a healthy environment to strengthen the ocean governance, because as I also said in the report, and I have repeated a lot, ocean issues are also human rights issues, but that is something that we're not seeing in practice. So I really want to highlight that, and the importance also to have a holistic, comprehensive, integrated, gender responsive, and human rights and ecosystem-based approach to all the ocean efforts. And in that, I really want to continue highlighting the intention from the mandate to continue supporting and working with states, with businesses, with indigenous peoples, and all other actors to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Special Rapporteur. And so now let me turn for the concluding remarks to the two co-chairs of the conference in Nice. First, I really want to warmly thank France and Costa Rica for the support. They also have wrote to us for this event. And I will make the easy choice of letting you manage who speaks first. As you co-chair, I don't want to interfere. But okay, it's a good opportunity for all of us to have now a good view of what will happen at such an important event in Nice in June.
Thank you, Yves. We will continue our collaboration, and I will be speaking for both of the co-chairs for now, so for sake of time. There were some slides that were presented. No? Okay, well, it's okay. No problem. So thank you all for participating into this event. Sometimes it's easier to be the last because you've already covered so many of these important issues and given us so much information. So just to clarify what UNOC is. So the conference will be covering a wide range of ocean governance issues, but the main idea is to countries, states that are participating to announce their commitments to advance on the implementation of SDG 14 on ocean issues. There will also be the political declaration that we have heard our colleagues speak of, and I think I will not go into much more details on that, just maybe give a message for delegations here to contact their own delegations in New York to step up the efforts to include the human rights language into this declaration. And I think Ghazali, because now I have all the 4 points that I will send to my colleagues over there as well. So thank you so much. As we also have been hearing, we expect that by the end of the conference, we will have the ratification of the BBNJ agreement. Hopefully we can get the 40 ratifications that are left. I take advantage as well, like Ghazali mentioned his photo, I mentioned mine, that's when I was in the BBNJ negotiations as well. There will also hopefully be the ratification on the agreement on harmful fishery subsidies of WTO and the Cape Agreement on safety and illegal fisheries that we are hoping come out as a result of the UNOC 3. I don't have anything else to add. I don't know, Regis, if you want to, if I missed something on UNOC.
Of course, you didn't miss something, but France is happy to take the floor just to have a few words. I'm thanking you all for your commitments in making this event a success, and especially thanking Costa Rica for long-term engagement. Yes, UNOC helps to be a key moment to acknowledging the various challenges the ocean is facing. Scientific issues, financial issues, we expect outcomes from the Blue Economy Forum that will happen before, political issues, of course, and human rights. There will be the number of sessions where human rights, the role of coastal communities, deep sea mining, and also the well-being and in the fishing industry will be addressed, including the fight against crimes. And we have to acknowledge that humans and oceans are part of the same ecosystem, that our health strongly depends on the health of the ocean. So thank you all for your extraordinary dedication. Yes, please join us in Nice, and then we will see if Nice is for the ocean, what Paris was for the planet in 2050.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, both Viviana and Regis, for this contribution. And I'd just like to add that there was a slide prepared by the French mission. It will be presented on the website where you will be able to hear this again, and you also have some presentations that will complement what you have been hearing here. So this brings us to the end of our event. Once again, I would really to thank all of the speakers here on the panel for their contribution. I'd like also to thank them and also wish good luck for all of those who are preparing the Nice conference, because as we heard, it's quite a big challenge in front of us. And there will be also a number of continuing discussions in the framework of the Geneva Rights and Environment talks. That will happen next Monday, where we will be able to hear again the special rapporteur, and you can see here some of the events. So we're encouraging you to come. And also I'll finish with a warm thank you to the team of the Geneva Environmental Network, without whom it would not have been possible to have such an event here. So I wish you all the best, and I suppose most of us will meet again now in room 20 for the continuation of the presentation of the report of the special rapporteur. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.